President Trump's legislative agenda is in the hands of the Senate, and they have given themselves a deadline of July 4th. That is just 1 month to overcome the divisions within the Republican Party over changes to the budget package. It passed the House by a razor-thin margin last month, and the current version of the bill grants additional funds for the defense budget and President Trump's immigration crackdown. But it also cuts spending for Medicaid, SNAP benefits, formerly known as food stamps, and energy subsidies. Some Republican senators are demanding even steeper cuts to federal spending, while others have raised concerns about changes to Medicaid. One prominent critic to emerge in all this, billionaire Tesla CEO Elon Musk, who left his post as a special government employee last week. And he wrote about the budget bill on X, saying in part, "This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong." Senate Majority Leader John Thune was asked about Musk and his sway over the process.
We obviously respect everything that Elon did with Doge. On this particular issue, we have a difference of opinion. We have a job to do, the American people elected us to do. We have an agenda that everybody campaigned on, most notably the President of the United States, and we're going to deliver on that agenda.
We're also tracking news from the White House as the Trump administration informs trading partners they want their best trade offers by Wednesday. The Ukrainian military is on the offensive, targeting a key bridge connecting Russia and the Crimean Peninsula. And Reuters is reporting Iran may reject a U.S. proposal on the future of its nuclear program. But we begin with CBS News team coverage on the budget. Congressional correspondent Nikole Killion is on Capitol Hill, and White House reporter Aaron Navarro there on the North Lawn. Nikole, we're going to start with you, though. How are congressional lawmakers reacting to Elon Musk criticizing this bill and so harshly, given how close he is with President Trump?
Well, I think they're trying to put some distance between that, especially now that Elon Musk is no longer a special government employee. Although I would note, look, Elon Musk even told our own CBS Sunday Morning when asked about this so-called big, beautiful bill, he said something to the effect of it can't be big and beautiful at the same time. So as far as his criticism, I wouldn't say that it's a surprise, maybe more so a surprise that he's gone so far in terms of calling it an abomination. But it's not the first time he has weighed in on matters here on Capitol Hill. And I think you saw Leader Thune there try to, again, put some distance between what Elon Musk is saying, noting that there are a variety of opinions out there. You know, other rank and file Republicans, for their part, you know, some of them are sympathetic to Elon Musk's concerns in that they understand the need to address spending more specifically with respect to bringing down the debt and the deficit. That is what some GOP senators have expressed concerns about. They like some of these cuts to go even further. But at the same time, you know, many of them know that at the end of the day, this is the president's agenda. It is one that he has laid out since before he came into office. So they do feel an obligation to get this package over the finish line and to try to do it within the next month if they can.
And on that note, Nikole, the White House has also submitted a rescissions package to Congress. It would make some of the Doge cuts we've seen permanent. So what stands out to you in these proposed cuts, and how are lawmakers reacting to this?
Well, again, no big surprises here. I mean, look, we started this new Congress and this new administration with the efforts of Elon Musk and Doge and all of these cuts that they have tried to make to the federal government. So this rescissions package is basically to try to codify some of those cuts into law. And we've seen some of those actions taken by the president through executive order, whether that is reducing funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which oversees NPR and PBS, or, you know, cuts to the PEPFAR program, USAID. A lot of those cuts that we saw at the outset of this year are contained in this $9.4 billion package. And the OMB director, Russ Vought, who was up here on Capitol Hill meeting with Speaker Johnson just yesterday about this package, did say that the White House could potentially send more rescission packages to Congress, which is something that Speaker Johnson also reiterated, that this may be the first package, but certainly potentially not the last.
Nikole Killion, thank you very much. And CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro joins us now. Aaron, we just heard from Nikole there about how Congress is reacting to Musk's criticizing this budget bill. How is the White House responding to this? And more broadly, what is President Trump's role in these budget talks?
Yeah, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked and read out loud, essentially, that post from Elon Musk just minutes after it went live on X. And she reiterated that President Trump already knows where Elon stands on this bill, said it doesn't change the president's opinion and that he is still firmly behind what he has called this, quote, one big, beautiful bill. The White House budget director, Russell Vought, was asked numerous times by reporters about Elon Musk's comments. He said he was not surprised by them and criticized some of the analysis that's at the core of Elon's criticism that this budget bill would add to the national deficit. And overall, when it comes to President Trump and this budget bill, he has been the one to kind of twist the arms of some of the House Freedom Caucus members. You're seeing him post now about some senators, such as Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. And President Trump posted this morning saying that, quote, Paul has very little understanding of this budget bill and said he never, quote, has any practical or constructive ideas. So certainly looking to put pressure there on that Republican senator holdout.
And Aaron, let's turn to the administration's ongoing talks with Iran now about its nuclear program. What is the latest we've heard from the president and the administration about those talks and what a deal could look like?
Yeah, there have been reports that the Trump administration has come to some sort of agreement or proposal to Iran for them to have a low level of enriching uranium that can be used for nuclear power and higher levels of nuclear weapon. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt did not confirm those reports and referred reporters to President Trump's comments where he said that the U.S. would not allow any enrichment of uranium. Iran's foreign minister said today that uranium production for civilian, quote, peaceful purposes is a priority for the country and said, quote, it will never be shut down. So certainly seems to be a stalemate here, but we'll see if there will be a sixth round of talks between the special envoy Steve Witkoff and Iran officials.
Aaron Navarro, thank you.